The morning was cold, sharper than usual. The sun was just beginning to rise, but the city streets were already alive with people rushing to work, buses roaring past, and the distant sound of car horns. On one quiet corner, a young woman struggled with a stroller. She was thin, with tired eyes that had seen more pain than her years should have allowed. Her clothes were worn and her shoes had holes, but her hands gripped the stroller firmly. Inside, her little boy, no older than 3, held a small blanket close to his chest. His eyes were wide, innocent, and trusting. She had been walking for almost an hour. Every step was heavy, but she pushed forward because she had no other choice. Her name was Tasha, and she was a single mother. She didn't have a home right now, didn't have a warm bed or even a reliable place to sleep. The small shelter she sometimes stayed in had strict rules, and she couldn't always get in. But the one thing she could do, no matter what, was keep her son safe. The city was unforgiving. People walked past her without looking, some avoiding eye contact as if noticing her would cost them something. Tasha had learned to move like a shadow, quiet and careful. But the streets were full of dangers, broken sidewalks, traffic, and people who didn't understand the struggle she faced every day. She clutched the stroller tightly, navigating the uneven pavement, trying to avoid potholes and cracks. As she turned a corner, she saw the hill ahead. It was steep, and at the bottom, cars moved fast along a busy road. Her heart sank a little because she knew the stroller was old. The wheels were wobbly, and the frame had small dents from years of use. She had patched it together with tape more times than she could count. Each time she thought it might finally be safe, another problem appeared. Her mind raced with the possibility of what could happen if the stroller slipped. Her son's safety was everything. She could lose sleep, go hungry, and face cold nights, but losing him, that was unimaginable. Taking a deep breath, she tightened her grip and started pushing the stroller carefully up the small rise before the hill. She had to cross it, but every step made her heart pound. Then, it happened. The wheel caught on a crack in the sidewalk. She stumbled forward, but she held on. Her body leaned as the stroller started to tip. She could feel her heart jump to her throat. Time seemed to slow. Her little boy looked up at her, calm but unaware of the danger, clutching his blanket like it would protect him from the world. The stroller began to roll forward, gaining speed. Her legs moved instinctively, lunging to catch it. Panic rose in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She knew fear could make her lose control. She grabbed the handle with both hands, her knuckles white, and with all her strength she yanked the stroller back. The wheels skidded against the pavement, and she felt a small tear in the fabric of the stroller, but it held. A few people nearby gasped. One woman dropped her coffee cup, the liquid spilling onto the sidewalk. Another man froze, staring, unsure whether to help. For a moment, no one moved. Tasha stood there, panting, holding her son safely. He smiled at her, his small hands gripping her shirt. "We're okay, Mommy," he said, his voice soft and trusting. She swallowed a lump in her throat and hugged him tightly. Even though the immediate danger had passed, her body was shaking. She sank to the curb, resting her forehead against the stroller. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the relief. She had avoided disaster, but she knew she couldn't stay on the streets forever. Every day brought new challenges, and today had started with one she almost couldn't handle. People around her started to murmur. A few nodded in respect, whispering to each other about the mother's bravery. Some tossed a coin into her small bag, but most continued walking, lost in their own busy lives. Tasha didn't expect help. She had long accepted that the world often ignored people like her, but even a small acknowledgement felt heavy in her chest, a strange mix of gratitude and sadness. She looked at her son. He was still smiling, unaware of how close they had come to danger. Tasha brushed the hair from his forehead and whispered, "I've got you, Amari. Always." His tiny hand found hers, and for a moment, the cold city, the harsh streets, and her tired body didn't matter. They had each other. That was enough to keep going, at least for now. Tasha rose slowly, adjusted the stroller, and began walking again. Her mind replayed the moment over and over. What if she hadn't grabbed the stroller in time? The thought made her shiver, but she pushed it aside. There was no time for fear now. She had to focus on getting through the day. The streets were growing busier. Cars honked, bicycles weaved between pedestrians, and the smell of food from street vendors mixed with the exhaust from traffic. Tasha moved carefully, weaving around people and avoiding puddles from last night's rain. Her eyes scanned every corner, every movement, looking for danger before it found them. At one point, she stopped at a crosswalk. The light turned green, and she started across, keeping one hand on the stroller and the other holding her son's tiny hand. People rushed past, but she moved slowly, deliberately. Each careful step was a small victory. Halfway across, a man in a suit stopped near her, holding his phone. He had been watching her from the sidewalk and finally decided to come closer. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Tasha looked up at him, startled. She wasn't used to people asking if she was okay. Usually they ignored her, pretended she didn't exist. "I'm fine," she said cautiously. She wasn't sure if she should trust him. Her life had taught her to be wary of strangers. But there was something in his tone, something genuine, that made her pause. "You were brave back there," he said. "Not everyone could have done what you just did." He gestured to the stroller. Tasha's stomach tightened. Brave. That word felt strange coming from someone outside her world. She had been surviving every day, doing what she had to do, but brave, that was a word she didn't give herself permission to use. Her son looked up at the man and waved, a small, innocent gesture. The man smiled back. "Hi there," he said warmly. The moment was simple, but it felt powerful to Tasha. A small recognition, a human connection, something rare in her life lately. She adjusted the blanket around her son and nodded to the man. "Thank you," she said quietly. Not for the words really, but for noticing, for seeing her, for acknowledging that her life, though hard, mattered in this moment. The man nodded back and stepped aside, letting them continue. Tasha took a deep breath and started walking again, pushing the stroller carefully down the next street. Her mind was racing with a mix of fear, relief, and exhaustion, but underneath it all there was a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope, she realized, came in small moments. A hand on the stroller, a stranger's kind word, the safety of her child. That morning she had been scared, nearly lost everything, but she had also felt the power of her own strength. She had stopped the stroller, protected her son, and survived another day. Tasha knew the streets wouldn't get any easier. Tomorrow might bring rain, harsh winds, or another close call. But for now she would keep moving, keep pushing, and keep fighting. For her son, for herself, and for the tiny flicker of hope that even in the hardest times things could change. And as she walked, the city bustling around her, she held her son a little closer. She whispered promises into his ear that only a mother could make. Promises of safety, love, and never giving up. No matter how cold the streets, no matter how many obstacles lay ahead, she would always be there. Always. And with that thought, Tasha and her son continued down the street, a small family surviving in a vast, uncaring city, but never alone, never defeated, and never without hope. The moment passed, and the city continued its relentless rhythm. People walked past, their eyes focused on their own destinations. Tasha adjusted the blanket around her son and kept walking. But she couldn't shake the memory of the man in the suit, the one who had stopped and called her brave. There was something unusual in the way he had spoken, his voice calm, kind, and genuinely interested in her safety. Moments like that were rare in her life, and it lingered in her mind as she made her way toward the corner where the streets opened into a small square. She found a quiet bench under a tree, hoping to rest for a moment before continuing her search for a safe place to spend the day. Amari clung to her hand as she sat down, his tiny fingers cold against hers. Tasha pulled him onto her lap, letting him sit against her chest, and hugged him tightly. The city around them moved fast, but in that small pocket of stillness, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The man in the suit appeared again, as if by coincidence. He walked slowly toward her, his steps measured. He didn't seem to be in a rush, and that was unusual for someone dressed so sharply, someone who clearly belonged to a world far away from hers. He carried a small cup of coffee, steam curling into the cool morning air. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice soft, careful not to startle her. "I saw what happened earlier. Are you sure you're okay?" Tasha looked up at him, cautious. She had learned long ago that people who asked questions often expected something in return or judged her. But there was no judgment in his eyes. He simply waited, patient, giving her space to answer. "I'm okay," she said slowly. Her voice was quiet but firm. "We're fine." She glanced at Amari, who was now fiddling with the edge of the blanket. "Just tired," the man nodded. You handled that stroller like a pro. Not everyone could have done what you just did. Tasha's stomach tightened. She wasn't used to compliments, especially from strangers who had no reason to care. She wanted to say thank you, but words caught in her throat. Thank you, she finally said. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the city noise, but he heard it. He set the coffee on the bench beside her. Here, you look like you could use a little warmth. Tasha hesitated. She wasn't used to people offering her anything. Accepting help felt dangerous, even when it was as simple as a cup of coffee. But the warmth from the cup seemed to seep into her hands and heart. She took it slowly, careful not to spill, and sipped. It was small, but it felt like someone had noticed her struggle, like someone cared. I'm Tasha, she said, finally allowing herself to introduce her name. And this is Amari. She looked down at her son, who smiled up at the man. Amari, he said with a warm smile. Nice to meet you. There was a pause, a silence that wasn't uncomfortable but thoughtful. He watched her as if trying to understand her story without her having to explain it yet. After a moment, he spoke again. Do you need a place to sit for a while? I know a cafe just around the corner. It's quiet and it has chairs that aren't broken like benches. Tasha shook her head gently. No, that's okay. We can stay here, thank you. He nodded, not pushing. All right. But if you change your mind, I'll be nearby. He gave her a small, reassuring smile and stepped back slightly. Tasha sipped her coffee again, feeling the warmth travel through her hands. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. As they sat, the city moved around them in a blur. People rushed by, some with children, some with briefcases, some just walking. A few glanced at Tasha and Amari, and she caught a few judgmental looks. She had learned to ignore them, but they still stung. Being homeless in a city meant carrying a weight that no one else could see. You were seen, but rarely noticed. You existed, but you were often treated like you didn't belong. Tasha wrapped her arms around Amari, holding him close. The warmth from the coffee faded, but the small spark of hope stayed. She thought about the man in the suit. He hadn't asked for anything from her, hadn't judged her, hadn't offered pity. It was rare, too rare. She didn't know if she should trust him, but a part of her wanted to. You're brave, Tasha, the man said again, as if reading her thoughts. Not everyone could keep calm and protect their child like you did. I mean it. She swallowed hard. Brave. It wasn't a word she used for herself. She had survived so much. Lost jobs, eviction, long nights without shelter, but she never thought of herself as brave. She was just trying to survive, one step at a time, one day at a time. But hearing it from someone outside her world made her heart swell a little. What? Why are you helping me? She asked quietly. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to feel. The man looked at her, serious but kind, because someone should. And sometimes helping doesn't mean giving money or food. Sometimes it's just noticing someone, seeing them. And if I can do more, I will. But first I want you to know you're not invisible. Tasha nodded slowly, unsure if she deserved such attention. She had grown used to surviving alone, relying only on herself. Trust was hard, but there was something in his voice that felt genuine, something that made her believe, even for a moment, that maybe not everyone in the world wanted to hurt or ignore her. They sat together for a while, and the man asked gentle questions, not prying but interested. He asked about her son, about how she had been managing, and even about small things like how she spent her mornings. Tasha found herself answering, carefully at first, then more freely. It felt strange talking to someone without fear of judgment. Amari, meanwhile, had settled between them, sipping water from his small bottle. He looked up at the man occasionally, curious but not shy. Tasha watched him, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down again. She had to keep him safe, had to find a way to survive, had to find a path forward. Finally, the man stood and extended his hand. I can't solve everything today, but I can offer a start. There's a community center nearby. They help mothers, especially single mothers, with support, training, and sometimes jobs. It's a safe place. I can walk you there if you like, Tasha blinked. A place that could help? That sounded almost too good to be true. She had heard promises before, people who said they could help only to vanish when she needed them most. But something in his calm, steady demeanor made her pause. Maybe this time it could be different. I don't know, she said softly, uncertainty heavy in her voice. I've been let down before. He nodded. I understand, but I'll be there with you. No pressure, no judgment. Just a safe place to see what's possible. Tasha looked down at Amari, who reached up and held her hand tightly. His small gesture reminded her of why she had to try. She had to take every chance, no matter how uncertain, for him, and maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something better. "Okay," she said finally, a quiet determination in her voice. "Let's go." The man smiled, genuinely happy, and they began walking together through the bustling streets. Tasha pushed the stroller carefully, her eyes scanning the road, but now with a tiny spark of hope lighting her way. She wasn't alone, not completely. For the first time in a long while, someone was walking with her, noticing her, willing to help. As they reached the community center, she saw other mothers with children, some talking quietly, some laughing softly. There were smiles, small gestures of kindness, and a sense of safety she hadn't felt in months. Tasha took a deep breath and pushed the door open, stepping inside with her son and the man who had chosen to notice them. It was just a small building, not fancy or grand, but inside, it felt like a different world, warm, welcoming, and full of people who cared. She could hear children laughing, voices speaking gently, and the faint sound of someone giving instructions for a program. It was a place that offered hope, a place that promised a chance to start over. Tasha looked at her son, who was now holding her hand tightly, his eyes wide with curiosity. She whispered, "We're going to be okay, Amari, I promise." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. Tasha stepped inside the community center, holding Amari close, and immediately felt a small wave of relief. The air was warmer than the streets, and the gentle hum of people talking and children playing felt like a quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, life could be a little easier here. She had been wary, cautious, unsure if this was just another place that would disappoint her. But the smiles on the faces around her, the calm voices, and the sense of order made her heart lift slightly. A woman approached them, mid-30s, with a soft voice and eyes that seemed to understand struggles without words. "Hello there," she said warmly. "You must be Tasha. Welcome, I'm Lila, and this must be Amari." Tasha nodded, surprised that someone remembered her name. Most of the time she felt invisible. To be recognized even by someone at the center felt strange but comforting. "Yes, that's us," Tasha said, her voice quiet. "Thank you for having us." Lila smiled and guided them to a small seating area near the entrance. "Take a seat. Make yourselves comfortable. We have programs today for mothers and children. You can look around, and when you're ready, I can explain how we can help you." Tasha sat down, setting the stroller carefully beside her. Amari squirmed a little but stayed close. She watched the other mothers and children moving through the room. Some were laughing, others quietly talking, but everyone seemed calm. It was strange for Tasha, who had spent so many months walking streets filled with noise, judgment, and stress. Here the chaos had been replaced by order, care, and understanding. The man in the suit, David, stood nearby, watching quietly. He didn't push her, didn't try to tell her what to do. He simply stayed there, a steady presence, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Tasha's heart felt heavy with gratitude. It had been so long since anyone had offered support without expecting something in return. Lila returned after a few minutes, carrying a folder with information. "I'll explain everything," she said gently. "We have programs for mothers like you. We can help with childcare, job training, and even temporary housing. The goal is to help you get back on your feet, not just for a day, but for the future." Tasha listened, absorbing every word, but also feeling a flicker of doubt. I don't know if I can," she admitted softly. "I've tried so many times before, and it never works out. People promise things, and then I'm left back on the streets." Lila nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I know it's hard to trust, but this isn't about promises. It's about support you can rely on. You take it step by step, and we'll be with you along the way. You're not alone here." The words struck Tasha in a way she hadn't expected. No one had said that to her in months, maybe years. Most people treated her as if she had to survive completely on her own. To hear someone offer real support without judgment felt almost unreal. David stepped closer, his presence calm and encouraging. "Tasha," he said softly, "I wanted to bring you here because I saw how strong you are. That moment with the stroller, that wasn't luck. That was courage. And courage deserves a chance to grow." Tasha's eyes filled with tears, and she looked down at Amari. His small hand squeezed hers, as if reminding her that she had to try. She nodded quietly, feeling the weight of responsibility and the small spark of hope that maybe this time things could be different. The center was full of activity. There were rooms with toys, small tables where children could draw, and larger spaces where mothers could meet and learn. Volunteers walked around speaking kindly, helping with small tasks and making sure everyone felt welcome. Tasha wandered slowly, letting Amari's curiosity guide her. He reached for blocks, then toys with wheels, and soon he was giggling as he pushed a small car across the floor. Watching him play, Tasha felt a flicker of relief. She had been so focused on survival that she sometimes forgot what it felt like for her son to be just a child. Seeing him laugh, even briefly, reminded her why she had to keep going. Every step she took mattered, not just for her, but for him. Lila guided her to a small office area. "Here," she said, "we'll sit down and discuss what kind of help you need most. We'll start with your immediate needs: food, clothing, shelter, and then move toward training and job opportunities. You'll have choices, and you can take things at your own pace." Tasha sat across from Lila, feeling nervous but also determined. She spoke about her struggles, how she had lost her apartment, the challenges of finding work while caring for Amari, and the constant fear of not knowing where they would sleep at night. Lila listened, taking notes, nodding, never interrupting, never judging. After Tasha finished speaking, Lila leaned back and smiled. "You've been through so much, Tasha. But you've also done something incredible. Keeping your child safe and moving forward despite everything. That shows strength and determination. Those are exactly the qualities that will help you succeed here." For the first time in a long while, Tasha felt seen. Not just noticed, but truly seen. She had spent months, maybe years, feeling invisible, overlooked, and dismissed. Here someone recognized her struggle and her strength, and it gave her a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in a long time. David spoke again, quietly. "We'll start with small steps. A safe place to stay, meals, and help with childcare. Then we'll look at training programs so you can find work that's stable and meaningful. You won't have to do it alone. I'll make sure you have guidance along the way." Tasha nodded, feeling the tightness in her chest ease slightly. It wouldn't be easy, she knew that. Months of homelessness couldn't be undone in a day. But here, for the first time in months, she saw a path forward. She saw hope. The following days at the center were full of small victories and challenges. Tasha learned to navigate the routines, to ask for help without fear, and to trust the people who were genuinely offering support. She met other mothers in similar situations, women who had faced hardship but were trying to rebuild their lives. They shared stories, advice, and encouragement. Tasha realized she wasn't alone in her struggle, and that knowledge was powerful. Amari thrived in the childcare program. He learned to interact with other children, to play, and to explore. His laughter became a constant in Tasha's life, a reminder of why she had to keep pushing forward. She watched him grow, and each day she felt more capable of providing for him, more confident in her ability to survive and thrive. David continued to check in, offering guidance and reassurance. He helped Tasha with practical matters, filling out forms, applying for programs, and planning next steps. His presence was steady, a constant reminder that someone believed in her when she had almost stopped believing in herself. One afternoon, after a long week, Tasha sat with Amari on a bench outside the center. The sun was setting, painting the city in warm shades of orange and pink. She held him close and whispered, "We're going to be okay, Amari, I promise. Things will get better." For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe it. She had been brave once, saving her son from danger on the streets. Now she had the chance to be brave in another way, by trusting, by taking small steps toward rebuilding their lives. And she knew that with each step, she was not just surviving but moving toward a future filled with hope, stability, and love. The evening came quietly, and Tasha and Amari returned to the temporary shelter the center had arranged for them. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. They had a warm bed, meals, and the certainty that they could face the next day with support. Tasha tucked Amari into bed, brushing his hair gently from his forehead. "Sleep well, my love," she whispered. "We've got a new start tomorrow." And as she sat beside him, watching him sleep, Tasha felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She had taken the first steps toward changing their lives, and the path, though challenging, was clear. She had help, she had hope, and she had the courage that had carried her through so many difficult days. For Tasha, this was more than a community center or a temporary shelter. It was the beginning of a journey, A journey of rebuilding, of learning, of finding strength in herself and in those who genuinely cared. And with Amari by her side, she knew they could face anything together. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Tasha. Every morning she woke up with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The streets had been replaced by schedules, routines, and responsibilities at the community center. She now had a safe place to stay at night, a steady supply of meals and childcare for Amari. But her days were still full of challenges. She woke early each morning, even before the sun was fully up, to get ready. The temporary apartment she and Amari stayed in was small but clean and warm. It wasn't luxurious, but for Tasha it was a miracle compared to the streets. She prepared a simple breakfast for her son, careful to make it filling even if it wasn't fancy. Amari sat at the small table, happily munching, his laughter echoing in the little room. That sound alone gave Tasha strength. She had endured so much for him, and seeing him safe and happy reminded her why she had to keep going. Once they were ready, she pushed the stroller through the streets again, heading to the community center. Each morning was a mix of anxiety and hope. She worried about being late, about making mistakes, about whether she was capable of handling the programs and responsibilities. But each day she reminded herself that she was stronger than she realized. She had survived the streets with Amari. She could handle this too. At the center, Tasha began to attend the training programs. There were sessions on financial management, childcare skills, basic job preparation, and even resume building. At first, it was overwhelming. There were forms to fill out, schedules to follow, and rules she wasn't used to. Sometimes she felt like she couldn't keep up. But the staff were patient, encouraging her step by step. One morning, she sat in a small classroom with a few other mothers. A volunteer was teaching them how to plan a budget, how to track expenses, and how to save even small amounts of money. Tasha listened carefully, taking notes, her mind racing with possibilities. She realized that for the first time, she was learning skills that could change her future, skills she had never had the chance to learn before. Amari spent his mornings in the childcare room, where he could play and learn while she focused. She loved hearing his laughter carry down the hall. It reminded her that all the effort she was putting in was not just for survival, but for building a future for him. Some days he would run to her with a drawing or a new skill he had learned, and her heart would swell with pride. The work wasn't easy. Some days Tasha felt completely drained. Balancing childcare, learning, and managing her own worries about the future was exhausting. She sometimes wanted to give up, to go back to the streets where life, though harsh, was predictable. But she couldn't, not with Amari depending on her. David continued to check in on her regularly. He didn't come to the center every day, but when he did, he offered guidance, advice, and encouragement. He helped her with small practical matters, like applying for additional support programs or learning how to manage her time more effectively. But more importantly, he reminded her of her own strength. One afternoon after a long week, Tasha was sitting in the center's lounge, filling out an application for a job training program. She felt exhausted, her hands trembling slightly as she held the pen. A staff member approached her quietly. "Tasha, can I speak with you for a moment?" She followed the woman into a small office. "I've been watching you," the staff member said softly. "I know it's been hard and I know you've faced challenges, but you're doing an incredible job. Your dedication, your perseverance, your care for Amari, it's inspiring. We think you have potential for more than this program alone. If you're willing, we'd like to offer you a mentorship opportunity where you can learn advanced skills and gain leadership experience." Tasha's eyes widened. She had never been offered anything like this before. She shook her head slowly. I don't know if I can. I'm not ready for that," the woman smiled kindly. "You're more ready than you think. We've seen your commitment, your courage, and your resilience. This isn't just about learning skills. It's about giving you the chance to grow and succeed. We believe in you, Tasha." Tasha left the office feeling a mix of fear and excitement. The idea of stepping into something bigger than herself was daunting, but it also filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she saw the possibility of not just surviving but thriving. Over the next few weeks, she began the mentorship program. It was challenging, pushing her in ways she hadn't experienced before. There were assignments, meetings, and new responsibilities that sometimes left her feeling overwhelmed. But each day she learned more about herself and what she was capable of. She discovered strengths she hadn't realized she had, the ability to lead, to organize, to solve problems. Amari continued to flourish as well. He learned new words, improved his coordination, and developed friendships with other children at the center. Seeing him grow reminded Tasha that all the struggles she endured were worth it. Her determination to give him a better life fueled her every day. David checked in occasionally, always offering guidance but never taking over. "You're doing more than you realize, Tasha," he told her one day. "Every step you take now is building a foundation for the future. Keep going even when it's hard. You're stronger than you think." There were moments of doubt, though. Some days, Tasha would sit quietly in her room at the temporary shelter, thinking about all she had lost and wondering if she was capable of sustaining this new life. She missed the safety of predictability even in hardship, and fear of failure sometimes crept in. But she reminded herself of the stroller on the hill, of how she had acted instinctively to protect Amari. That instinct, that courage was still inside her. One afternoon, she received unexpected praise from the program coordinator. "Tasha, your progress has been remarkable. You've inspired other mothers here. They look up to your dedication and strength. You've not only helped yourself but also created a positive influence for others. Keep pushing forward." Tasha felt a lump in her throat. She had never considered that her struggles and successes could inspire others. It was humbling and motivating at the same time. She realized that her life was no longer just about survival. It was about building a future, not just for herself and Amari, but also as an example of resilience and courage. As weeks turned into months, Tasha began to see tangible changes. She learned to manage her time, budget her money, and plan for the future. She felt more confident in her abilities and more hopeful about the possibilities ahead. The mentorship program opened doors to new opportunities, and she began to see herself not as someone trapped in circumstances, but as someone capable of shaping her own path. Evenings were still quiet and reflective. After Amari was asleep, Tasha would sit by the window of their small apartment looking out at the city lights. She thought about the streets they had left behind, the dangers they had survived, and the small moments of kindness that had changed their course. The memory of the man in the suit, the community center, and the people who had believed in her filled her with gratitude. She realized that life was a series of steps, some small, some large, but each one mattered. Each act of courage, each moment of perseverance, each decision to keep moving forward, built toward something greater, and with Amari by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges came next. One evening, as she tucked Amari into bed, she whispered, "We're almost there, my love. A better life is coming." She held him close, feeling the warmth of his small body against hers, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel that hope fully. The journey wasn't over, and there were still challenges ahead. But Tasha had discovered her strength, resilience, and determination. She had learned that help could come when least expected, that trust could be rebuilt, and that courage wasn't just about facing danger. It was about taking the steps to create a better life. No matter how difficult, and in that quiet moment, she made a silent promise to herself and to Amari. No matter what came next, they would face it together with strength, love, and the courage to keep moving forward. The months had passed quickly, though Tasha felt every moment of them. Each day brought new lessons, small victories, and challenges that tested her strength and patience. The streets that once seemed endless and cruel were now behind her, replaced by routines, schedules, and the stability she had longed for. Tasha had changed, grown, and found a resilience inside herself she hadn't known existed. Her mornings began with the soft sunlight spilling into their small apartment. Amari would wake first, rubbing his eyes and calling out for her. Tasha's heart would swell as she saw his small face bright and full of energy, ready to face the day with curiosity and joy. She prepared a simple breakfast for him, usually scrambled eggs or oatmeal, something nourishing and warm. They ate together, talking quietly about the day ahead. These mornings, filled with laughter and conversation, were moments Tasha cherished above all else. After breakfast, they would leave the apartment together. Tasha now had a part-time job through the community program she had joined months earlier. She worked in a supportive role, helping other mothers who were navigating challenges similar to hers. Some days were difficult, managing paperwork, guiding new mothers, and ensuring the children were cared for, but Tasha embraced it. She loved helping others, sharing her experience and seeing the impact she could make. It reminded her of how far she had come. Amari thrived in the childcare program, learning new words, exploring, and playing with other children. Tasha loved watching him develop, his confidence growing alongside hers. She often caught him trying new things, a new word, a new game, a new drawing, and she felt a deep sense of pride. These small moments reminded her of why she had endured so much, why she had fought so hard to keep them safe, and why she had taken the steps to trust again. One afternoon, David visited the center to check on the mothers participating in the program. When he saw Tasha, he smiled warmly. "You've done incredible work, Tasha," he said. "Your dedication and perseverance are inspiring not just for me but for everyone here." Tasha smiled, feeling a mixture of gratitude and humility. "I couldn't have done it without the support," she said softly. "This place, it gave me a chance I didn't think I would ever have." David nodded. "You took the chance, Tasha. You made the choice to keep moving forward even when it was hard. That courage brought you here. You didn't just survive, you grew." Tasha thought about her journey, from the cold city streets to this safe space filled with warmth, support, and opportunity. She remembered the day she had nearly lost Amari to a runaway stroller, and how a stranger's kindness had opened a door she hadn't expected. Every challenge she had faced, every moment of doubt had led to this. She had learned that courage was not just about surviving danger, but about embracing change, trusting others, and believing in herself. Weeks later, Tasha received news that she had been offered a permanent position within the program. It wasn't just a job. It was a chance to make a real difference, to have stability, and to continue building the future she had dreamed of for herself and Amari. She felt a surge of emotions, relief, joy, pride, and hope all mingling together. Her first day in the new role was filled with nervous excitement. She walked into the office holding her head high, determined to prove to herself and everyone else that she was capable. The staff welcomed her warmly, acknowledging her hard work and dedication. Tasha realized that she had not only earned this opportunity, but had also become a role model for other mothers in the program. Amari's progress continued alongside her own. He was thriving socially, emotionally, and academically. He loved attending activities at the center, interacting with other children, and learning new things each day. Tasha found joy in watching him grow, knowing that the stability and care she was able to provide now would shape his future in ways she had only dreamed of. One quiet evening, after a long day at work and a visit to the center, Tasha and Amari walked home together. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. She held his small hand tightly, feeling the warmth of his fingers against hers. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel a deep sense of peace. They had survived the streets, weathered countless challenges, and now they were moving forward together. They stopped briefly to watch a group of children playing in a small park. Amari's eyes lit up as he pointed to a swing, and Tasha lifted him onto it, pushing gently as he laughed. She watched him, her heart full of love and gratitude. Every hardship she had faced, every sleepless night, every worry about the future, it had all led to this moment of simple, profound happiness. David had continued to support her, offering guidance and encouragement whenever needed. But Tasha had grown more confident and independent. She was no longer the woman who had clutched the stroller on that steep hill. She was stronger, wiser, and fully capable of providing a stable and loving environment for Amari. She had transformed her life not only through opportunity, but through her own courage, determination, and resilience. The community center remained a central part of their lives. Tasha continued mentoring other mothers, sharing her story and